The asteroid belt was a dangerous place to salvage, a spinning field of jagged rock and twisted metal from centuries of abandoned ships. But for Kalen Vance, it was just another day at the office. "Sparky, what's our proximity to that derelict?" Kalen called out, adjusting the controls of the Nomad, his aging salvage vessel that had seen better days. A mechanical whir preceded the response as the maintenance robot swiveled its optical sensors toward the main view screen. "Approximately 237 meters, Captain. I calculate a 76.4% chance of successful docking without critical hull damage. May I suggest deploying the magnetic tethers at half strength to minimize potential collision?" Kalen sighed. "Just give me a yes or no on whether we can dock safely. Those are binary options that fail to account for the probabilistic nature of—" "That's a yes, then," Kalen interrupted, guiding the Nomad closer to the abandoned ship. It was larger than most derelicts he'd encountered in the belt, a prisoner transport vessel by the looks of it, bearing the faded insignia of one of the Outer Rim jurisdictions. As the Nomad's docking mechanism engaged with a satisfying clunk, Kalen reached for his environment suit and sidearm. "Run standard diagnostics while I'm gone, and keep the engines warm. Standard salvage protocols indicate a minimum crew of 2 for unexplored vessels," Sparky noted. "Standard salvage protocols were written by people who never had to split their profits," Kalen replied, securing his helmet. "If I'm not back in 2 hours, you can come looking." The airlock cycled, and Kalen stepped onto the derelict. The emergency lighting had long since failed, leaving only the beam from his helmet to cut through the darkness. The ship was cold, its life support systems offline, and the silence was broken only by the creak of metal and the soft hiss of his own breathing inside his helmet. Something had gone terribly wrong here. The corridor leading from the airlock was marked with scorch marks, evidence of an intense firefight. As he moved deeper into the ship, he found a first body, a security officer frozen in death, weapons still clutched in rigid fingers. "Sparky, I'm sending you some footage. Run it through the ship's database. See if you can identify this vessel." "Processing," came the reply in his earpiece. "Records indicate this is the Helix Dawn, a prisoner transport vessel reported missing 6 standard months ago. No rescue mission was deployed due to its classified nature." "Classified, huh?" Kalen muttered, continuing his exploration. "That usually means either political prisoners or something worse." The prisoner hold was a scene from a nightmare. More bodies, guards and prisoners alike, floated in the zero gravity, frozen in their final moments. Whatever had happened here had been quick and brutal. But amidst the carnage, something caught Kalen's eye, a flicker of light where there should be none. In the center of the hold, chained to a reinforced pillar, was a woman. Unlike the others, she appeared to be alive, suspended in a state of near hibernation. Her skin was pale blue with intricate luminescent markings that pulsed faintly along her arms and face. She was clearly not human, though humanoid in form, with delicate features and long silver hair that floated around her face like a halo. Kalen approached cautiously. "Sparky, I found a survivor. Appears to be Karani based on the bioluminescent markings. Karani are classified as a high-risk species under Colonial Mandate 47B, Sparky replied immediately. "Approach with extreme caution. They are known for exceptional combat abilities and psychotropic defensive mechanisms." "She's in chains, Sparky, and half dead by the looks of it." Something about the scene triggered memories Kalen had long suppressed, of his own time in captivity, of the feeling of cold metal against his wrists, of the desperation for someone, anyone, to find him before it was too late. Before he could second-guess himself, he was already working on the locks. Colonial protocol strictly prohibits interference with secure prisoner transport systems, Sparky warned. "This ship is derelict, the crew is dead, and I'm not leaving anyone to die in chains," Kalen replied, his voice tight. "Not even a Karani." The locks finally gave way under his tools, and the woman's body drifted free. As Kalen caught her, her eyes snapped open, vivid, iridescent violet, and locked onto his face through his visor. For a moment, neither moved. Then her hand shot out with shocking speed, grasping his wrist with surprising strength for someone so close to death. "Earthman," she whispered, her voice hoarse but musical, the universal translator in his helmet converting her words. "You should not have come here." Before Kalen could respond, the ship's emergency systems suddenly blared to life, bathing everything in pulsing red light. "Captain," Sparky's voice came urgently through the calm. "A vessel has entered the immediate vicinity. Configuration matches known Vrak Syndicate attack craft. They appear to be preparing to dock." "The Vrak," the woman rasped, her grip on Kalen's wrist tightening. "They found me again." "Friend of yours?" Kalen asked, already pulling her toward the exit. "The opposite," she said, struggling to move in her weakened state. "They're the ones who imprison me. The ones who kill my escort. If they recapture me—" "Not happening," Kalen decided, scooping her into his arms. She weighed remarkably little in the low gravity. "Sparky, prep the Nomad for immediate departure, and warm up the rear defenses. The probability of successful escape from a Vrak Syndicate vessel is approximately—" "Just do it." Carrying the Karani woman, Kalen raced back through the corridors of the prisoner ship. Behind them, the sound of a forced entry echoed. The Vrak were boarding. As they reached the airlock connecting to the Nomad, plasma fires sizzled past them, striking the wall inches from Kalen's head. "Your weapon," the woman said, extending her hand. "You can barely stand," Kalen replied, pushing her through the airlock. "I am Karani," she said simply, as if that explained everything. Something in her tone made Kalen hand over his sidearm. The moment it touched her palm, her demeanor changed. Despite her weakened state, she moved with fluid grace, turning and firing 3 precise shots down the corridor. 3 distinct cries of pain followed. "Impressive," Kalen admitted as they sealed the airlock behind them. "Got a name?" "Lyra," she replied, handing back his weapon. "And my thanks, Earthman, though you may come to regret freeing me." "Kalen," he corrected, helping her to the bridge as the Nomad's engines roared to life. "And regret is an old friend of mine." The Vrak ship was already moving to block their escape route, its weapons systems powering up. Kalen slid into the pilot's seat, hands dancing across the controls. "They will not let us leave alive," Lyra warned, collapsing into the co-pilot's chair. "The Vrak never abandon their prey." "Then it's a good thing we're in an asteroid belt," Kalen replied with a grim smile, punching the thrusters to maximum. The Nomad shot forward, narrowly missing the Vrak vessel's first volley of weapons fire. What followed was a harrowing chase through the spinning debris of the asteroid belt. The Vrak ship was newer, faster, and better armed, but the Nomad was smaller and more maneuverable, and Kalen knew how to use the terrain to his advantage. He skimmed perilously close to massive rocks, using them as shields against the Vrak's weapons, occasionally diving into narrow gaps that forced their pursuers to go around. "Captain, the primary coolant system is operating at 147% of recommended capacity," Sparky warned from a station. "Engine failure probability is increasing exponentially." "Noted," Kalen replied tersely, executing a tight spiral around a slowly spinning asteroid before suddenly reversing thrusters, letting the Vrak ship overshoot them. In the brief moment before their pursuers could correct their course, Kalen fired the Nomad's modest rear weapons, striking one of the Vrak ship's maneuvering thrusters. It wasn't enough to disable the vessel, but it bought them precious seconds. Seconds Kalen used to dive the Nomad into a particularly dense cluster of asteroids, navigating by instinct more than instrumentation. "You fly well," Lyra observed, her voice stronger now, watching him with those unervingly bright eyes. "For an Earthman, save the compliments for when we're actually safe," Kalen replied, though the corner of his mouth twitched upward. After 20 more minutes of desperate maneuvering, they finally lost their pursuers and broke free from the asteroid belt, setting course for Meridian Station, a neutral outpost where they could make repairs and lie low for a while. As the adrenaline of the chase faded, Kalen turned to find Lyra studying him intently. "Why did you free me?" she asked directly. Kalen shrugged, uncomfortable with the question. Seemed like the right thing to do. "Most humans would not risk themselves for a chained Karani," she pressed. "They fear us." With reason. I don't like chains, he answered simply, turning back to the controls. Any kind on anyone. End of story. Lyra seemed to accept this, leaning back at her seat. I must contact my people. They will come for me. Fine by me, Kalen replied. Once we reach Meridian, you can use their comm system. Then we part ways, no hard feelings. If only it had been that simple. Meridian Station hung in space like a tarnished coin, its once gleaming hull now patched and weathered by decades of use. It was neutral territory, a place where questions weren't asked as long as the right palms were greased. Perfect for temporary repairs and disappearing. We'll dock at the outer ring, Kalen told Lyra as they approached. Less security, fewer eyes. I know a mechanic who can patch up the Nomad without logging it in the station registry. And while your ship is repaired, I will contact my kin, Lyra said. She had recovered remarkably quickly during their journey, her luminescent markings now pulsing with a steady, healthy glow. She had borrowed some of Kalen's spare clothes, which hung loosely on her slender frame, but covered the more distinctive aspects of her appearance. About that, Kalen said hesitantly. The Karani aren't exactly welcome in some parts of the galaxy. Maybe keep a low profile until your people arrive. Lyra's expression hardened. I will not hide what I am, but I understand the necessity of discretion. My people will come quickly once contacted. The docking procedure went smoothly, and Kalen's contact, a grizzled mechanic named Jorvik, agreed to begin repairs immediately, asking no questions about the plasma scoring on the hull. 2 standard days, he grunted, eyeing the damage. Not an hour less, and double the usual rate. Highway robbery, Kalen muttered, but nodded his agreement. Just keep it quiet. While Jorvik worked, Kalen escorted Lyra to a secure communications booth in one of the station's less reputable sectors. He paid the attendant extra to ensure privacy and waited outside while Lyra made her transmission. How long will it take your people to arrive? He asked when she emerged. They were already searching for me, she replied. They will be here within 1 planetary rotation. Kalen nodded, relieved. 1 more day, and his unexpected detour into Karani affairs would be over. I've booked a room at a nearby hostel. Not fancy, but it's secure. We'll lie low until they arrive. The room was indeed basic. Little more than a sleeping alcove, a sanitation unit, and a small table with 2 chairs. But it was clean and off the main thoroughfares of the station. So, Kalen said awkwardly after they'd settled in, want to tell me why the Vrak Syndicate had you chained up on a prison transport? Lyra's luminescent markings flickered briefly, an emotional response of some kind. My people have been at war with the Vrak for generations. Not open war, but a shadow conflict. They seek what we protect. She paused. I was part of a diplomatic mission to the Colonial Assembly when our ship was ambushed. The others of my escort were killed outright. I was taken for questioning. The way she said questioning made Kalen's jaw tighten. He knew too well what that could entail. And what exactly do your people protect that's worth all that? He asked. Lyra's gaze was level. Something the Vrak must never possess. That is all you need to know, Earthman. Kalen raised his hands in surrender. Fair enough. We all have our secrets. The rest of the day passed in relative calm. Lyra meditated for several hours, her markings pulsing in complex patterns, while Kalen checked in with Sparky via comm link and napped in the chair. By evening station time, both were restless. Your mechanical companion, Lyra said suddenly, breaking a long silence. It speaks oddly for an artificial intelligence. Sparky? Yeah, he's unique. Kalen smiled despite himself. Salvaged him from an abandoned research outpost years ago. His primary programming was for statistical analysis and risk assessment, but he's picked up all sorts of quirks over the years. Still obsessed with probabilities and regulations, though. You care for him, Lyra observed. As more than a tool. He saved my life more times than I can count, Kalen replied. Even if he drives me crazy half the time. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft ping from Lyra's borrowed communicator. Her expression brightened as she checked it. They have arrived, she announced. Earlier than expected. Kalen felt a curious mix of relief and something like disappointment. Great. Let's go meet them at the docking bay. But as they made their way through the station's corridors, they noticed a distinct change in the atmosphere. Station residents were hurrying to their quarters. Security personnel were suddenly visible at every intersection, and attention hung in the air. "Something's wrong," Kalen muttered, instinctively moving his hand closer to his concealed sidearm. They got their answer when they reached the main concourse overlooking the central docking area. Through the massive observation windows, they could see not the small rescue vessel Kalen had expected, but an enormous warship, its hull adorned with intricate glowing symbols similar to the markings on Lyra's skin. It dwarfed every other vessel docked at the station, its weapon systems clearly visible but currently dormant. "That's your rescue party?" Kalen asked incredulously. Lyra looked equally surprised. "That is the Stellar Oath, flagship of the Kirani fleet. My sister." She trailed off, her markings pulsing rapidly. "Your sister commands that behemoth?" "Matriarch Vorla is supreme commander of the Kirani Defense Force," Lyra confirmed, a hint of apprehension in her voice. "She would not bring the flagship unless—" She didn't finish her thought, as a delegation was already emerging from the ship's docking tube. At its head walked a tall, imposing Kirani woman whose resemblance to Lyra was obvious, though her features were sharper, her bearing rigid with authority. Her skin bore more elaborate luminescent patterns, and instead of the simple borrowed clothes Lyra wore, she was clad in form-fitting armor that seemed to enhance rather than conceal her alien nature. Behind Matriarch Vorla came at least 15 Kirani warriors, all female, all bearing weapons that Meridian Station security forces were eyeing nervously but not challenging. Lyra straightened her posture and stepped forward to meet her sister, Kalen following a few paces behind, suddenly very aware of how out of place he was. The reunion was not what he expected. Instead of an emotional embrace, Vorla inclined her head formally to Lyra, who returned the gesture. "Sister," Vorla said, her voice deeper than Lyra's but with the same musical quality. "Your capture was a blow to our house. Your return brings honor." "The honor belongs to this Earthman," Lyra replied, gesturing to Kalen. "He freed me from the Vrak's chains and brought me to safety, risking his own life." Vorla turned her penetrating gaze on Kalen, who fought the urge to step back. Her eyes were the same violet as Lyra's, but colder, calculating. "You have the gratitude of the Kirani people, Earthman," she said formally. "Few would show such courage for one of our kind." "Name's Kalen Vance," he replied, attempting a respectful nod. "And anyone would have done the same." "No," Vorla stated flatly. "They would not. Which makes your action all the more significant." She turned back to Lyra, speaking in their native tongue, the translator in Kalen's pocket struggling to keep up with their rapid exchange. He caught fragments about the old ways and the ritual, with Lyra seeming to argue against whatever Vorla was proposing. The other Kirani warriors watched impassively, though their hands never strayed far from their weapons. Finally, Lyra switched back to the common language. "Sister, this is unnecessary and outdated. He has done enough. It is our way," Vorla replied firmly. "And in times such as these, we must honor the old ways more than ever." She turned back to Kalen, her expression solemn. "Kalen Vance of Earth, you have performed the act of Jewakital, the breaking of chains, for a daughter of the Kirani bloodline. According to our most ancient laws, this creates a bond of honor." Kalen glanced at Lyra, who looked troubled. "A simple thank you is fine," he said cautiously. "The gratitude of the Kirani is never simple," Vorla replied. "The ritual of Jewakital states that when a non-Kirani male frees a Kirani warrior maiden from unjust imprisonment, a sacred bond is formed. By our law, you are now honor-bound to protect not only the one you freed, but all unmarried women of her direct bloodline, should they require it." Kalen blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "It means," Lyra interjected, clearly frustrated, "that according to ancient Kirani tradition, you are now our protector. All of us." She gestured to the assembled warriors, many of whom Kalen now realized bore facial features similar to Lyra's. "My sisters, my cousins, all of my female kin who have not yet taken a life mate." "That's flattering," Kalen said carefully, but I'm just a salvage operator. I was happy to help Lyra, but I'm not in the bodyguard business. Vorla's expression didn't change. This is not a business arrangement, Earthman. It is a sacred duty, one not invoked lightly. Her markings pulsed with an intensity that somehow conveyed warning. The Vrak Syndicate hunts our bloodline more aggressively than ever before. Your actions in freeing Lyra and evading their pursuit demonstrate your capability. I don't think you understand, Kalen said, beginning to feel trapped. I work alone. Just me and my ship and Sparky. I can't take responsibility for, 15 Karani warriors. 17. One of the other Karani corrected, her tone suggesting the number should have been obvious. Sister, Lyra pleaded, he is right. This ritual was meant for ancient times, when a single warrior might free a captured Karani. Not for the modern age. We cannot force this upon him. The ritual makes no distinction between ages, Vorla replied sternly. And we face extinction, Lyra. The Vrak grow bolder, their technology advances, and our numbers dwindle. We need every advantage, every protection afforded by our traditions. She turned back to Kalen. You are bound by honor, Kalen Vance. Refusal would be problematic. The implication was clear in her tone. Kalen looked to the station security personnel, who were deliberately looking. Anywhere but at the confrontation. Meridian Station's neutrality policy meant they wouldn't intervene in what they considered a cultural matter. And if I refuse, he asked, already knowing the answer, then we would be forced to consider your ship and person as compensation for the dishonor. Vorla stated matter-of-factly. It would be regrettable. Kalen's hand drifted closer to his weapon, then stopped. Even if he could draw before these Karani warriors cut him down, what then? He'd be hunted across the galaxy. Captain, Sparky's voice came through his communicator. I have been monitoring the situation through station security feeds. Based on my analysis of Karani combat capabilities and our current tactical position, I calculate our survival probability at 3.27% should you refuse their terms. Not helping, Sparky, Kalen muttered. He looked at Lyra, hoping for some support, but while she seemed unhappy with the situation, she also appeared resigned to it. This was her culture, after all. How long? He asked finally. Until the Vrak threat is neutralized, Vorla replied. Or until our bloodline no longer requires protection. So, indefinitely, Kalen translated. Would you prefer a specific term? Perhaps we could arrange for your service to end when you reach the age where your species can no longer effectively fight. One of the other Karani suggested, apparently trying to be helpful. That's not better, Kalen sighed. He ran a hand through his hair, mind racing through options, finding none that ended well for him. My ship is being repaired. I can't go anywhere for at least another day. We will accelerate the repairs, Vorla declared. The Stellar Oath carries maintenance drones that can complete the work within hours. Then we depart. Depart? To where? That will be discussed once we have left this station, Vorla replied. The walls have ears, even here. Trapped between Karani honor and Karani weapons, Kalen saw only one path forward. Fine, he agreed reluctantly. I'll be your, whatever this is, protector, but my ship, my rules. And Sparky comes too. Acceptable, Vorla nodded, as if she'd expected nothing less. The ritual of JYK Tau is now officially invoked. Welcome to the service of House Karani, Kalen Vance of Earth. As the Karani warriors began to disperse, already making arrangements for the Nomads' repairs and their departure, Lyra approached Kalen. I am sorry, she said quietly. This was not my intention when I contacted them. I know, Kalen replied, watching as his simple life slipped away before his eyes. Looks like we're stuck with each other for a while longer. My sister is intense in her dedication to our ways, Lyra continued. But she is not cruel, and our need is genuine. The Vrak would not have committed so many resources to capturing me if their threat was not serious. Kalen nodded absently, already wondering how he'd explain this to Sparky. So, 17 Karani warriors on my small salvage ship. This should be interesting. Lyra's markings pulsed in what might have been amusement. We adapt easily to confined spaces, and you may find us useful in more ways than you expect. I suppose we'll find out, Kalen replied, watching as Vorla issued commands to her warriors with brisk efficiency. I just hope I live long enough to regret this properly. The integration of 17 Karani warriors onto the Nomad proved every bit as chaotic as Kalen had anticipated. His ship, designed for a crew of 5 at maximum, suddenly housed 18 passengers plus himself and Sparky. The Karani maintenance drones had expanded the ship's internal space somewhat by reconfiguring storage areas into sleeping quarters, but it was still cramped by any standard. Captain, I must inform you that we are now operating at 342% of recommended life support capacity, Sparky announced as the Nomad detached from Meridian Station, now fully repaired and upgraded with Karani technology. Additionally, the presence of 17 armed individuals in such close proximity increases the probability of accidental weapons discharge by. Thank you, Sparky, Kalen interrupted, focusing on the navigation console. Beside him, Vorla stood rigid, observing his every move with those unsettling violet eyes. Where exactly are we headed, Matriarch? Set course for the Cygnus Void, she instructed. I will provide specific coordinates once we are away from monitored space. The Void is mostly uncharted, Kalen pointed out. Perfect place for an ambush. It is also beyond colonial jurisdiction, Vorla replied. We cannot risk interference. Throughout the ship, Karani warriors were establishing themselves in their assigned spaces, arranging their limited possessions with military precision. Unlike their matriarch, most seemed to regard their new situation with curiosity rather than suspicion, examining the Nomad's systems and occasionally attempting conversation with a very flustered Sparky. Your artificial intelligence is oddly programmed. One of the warriors, Kalen thought her name was Naira, commented as Sparky attempted to explain the proper storage protocols for energy weapons. It seems excessively concerned with improbable failure scenarios. That's his charm, Kalen replied dryly. He's kept me alive this long. Lyra had taken up position near the secondary navigation console, seemingly trying to create a buffer between Kalen and her more intimidating sister. The Nomad is faster than it appears, she observed. Your modifications are impressive. Necessity, Kalen shrugged. Can't outrun trouble if your ship's slower than standard. The first few hours passed in tense silence as they cleared Meridian's traffic control zone and entered open space. Kalen maintained a randomized flight path, standard procedure when trying to avoid being tracked, while Vorla periodically checked in with the Stellar Oath, which was taking a different route to the same destination. It was during the ship's artificial night cycle, with most of the Karani resting in their makeshift quarters, that Kalen found himself alone on the bridge with Lyra. Your sister doesn't trust me, he said without preamble, checking the ship's systems out of habit. Vorla trusts no one outside our bloodline, Lyra replied. It is not personal. She has carried the burden of leadership since our mother's death 10 cycles ago. The weight of our survival rests on her shoulders. And what exactly are you all running from? Kalen asked. I know it's the Vrak, but why? What could they possibly want with your family specifically? Lyra's markings dimmed slightly, a sign of hesitation. It is complicated. I've got nothing but time. Kalen gestured to the empty bridge. And if I'm risking my neck for your family, I deserve to know why. After a long moment, Lyra nodded. You are right. She moved closer, lowering her voice despite their solitude. My bloodline is unique among the Karani. We are the last direct descendants of the Primes, those who built our ancient civilization before the Great Dispersion. Our genetic pattern contains, let's call it a key. A key to what? Kalen prompted when she paused. To our ancestral home, Karani Prime, and the defenses that protect it, she continued. Legend says it contains technology of immense power, sealed away to prevent misuse. The location has been lost for millennia, but certain records survived, enough for the Vrak to learn of its existence and of our connection to it. So they want to capture your family, use your DNA, or whatever to access this ancient technology, Kalen summarized. And they started with you. I was the easiest target, Lyra admitted. As a diplomatic envoy, I traveled beyond our protected territories. My capture was a first step. They interrogated me, tried to extract the genetic markers they believed would lead them to Kirani Prime. When that failed, they were transporting me to a more secure facility for deeper extraction. Her voice faltered slightly. Well, that didn't happen, Kalen said firmly. And it won't. Lyra's markings brightened. No, thanks to you. But now you understand why Vorla invoked the ritual. Our entire species may depend on protecting our bloodline. Does your bloodline know where this Kirani Prime is? Kalen asked. Not exactly, Lyra admitted. We have fragments, star charts, riddles, genetic memories passed down through generations. Each daughter of our line carries a piece of the puzzle, encoded in our very being. Only together, in the proper circumstance, might we unlock the way. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm from the ship's sensors. Kalen spun toward the console, rapidly assessing the threat. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, he announced, activating the ship-wide comm. All hands to stations, we've got company. The Kirani warriors responded with impressive speed, emerging from their quarters fully armed and alert despite having been roused from rest. Vorla appeared on the bridge moments later, her expression grim. Vrak, she demanded, studying the sensor readings. 3 ships, Vrak configuration, Kalen confirmed, already executing evasive maneuvers. They must have tracked us from Meridian. Impossible, Vorla declared. We took every precaution. The probability suggests a tracking device planted on the hull during repairs, Sparky interjected. Alternatively, there may be quantum-entangled particles embedded in Lyra's biological material during her captivity. All eyes turned to Lyra, whose markings pulsed with sudden alarm. They did perform medical procedures, she acknowledged. I thought it was merely torture, but no time to figure out now, Kalen said, pushing the Nomad's engines to maximum as the Vrak ships moved to intercept. We're outgunned and outnumbered. The stellar oath is still 6 hours. From our position, Vorla stated, checking her communicator. We must evade until then. The Nomad shuddered as the first volley of Vrak weapons fire narrowly missed their port side. Kalen's hands flew across the controls, executing a series of unpredictable maneuvers that momentarily confused their pursuers' targeting systems. Your ship has been enhanced with Kirani technology, Vorla reminded him. Activate the phase shift drive. The what now? Kalen glanced at her in confusion. One of the Kirani warriors stepped forward, moving to a panel that Kalen was certain hadn't existed on his ship before. Allow me, Earthman, she said, activating a sequence that made the entire ship vibrate at an unusual frequency. Phase shift engaged, Sparky announced, his mechanical voice showing a rare hint of surprise. Ship is now operating at 42% standard detection signature. However, power consumption is elevated by 87%. It won't hide us completely, but it will confuse their targeting, the warrior explained. We will appear as a ghost image on their sensors. Sure enough, the next volley of Vrak weapons fire passed harmlessly through the space where the Nomad had been, tracking their sensor echo rather than their actual position. Impressive, Kalen admitted, using the advantage to put more distance between them and their pursuers. Any other surprises you've added to my ship that I should know about? Several, Vorla replied without elaboration, turning to her warriors. Prepare the pulse cannons. Kalen watched in amazement as 4 of the Kirani moved to stations around the bridge that definitely hadn't been there before, activating weapon systems that made the Nomad's original armaments look like toys. Target their propulsion systems, Vorla ordered. Disable, don't destroy. We need to know how they tracked us. The ensuing battle was unlike anything Kalen had experienced in his years of space travel. The Kirani warriors worked with synchronized precision, coordinating their fire with Kalen's evasive maneuvers. The Vrak ships, initially confident in their superiority, found themselves struggling to land a hit on the constantly shifting Phantom target. When the Nomad finally struck back, the pulse cannons released brilliant streams of energy that cut through the lead Vrak ship's shields like they weren't there, precisely crippling its engines. One down, announced the Kirani weapons officer with cool satisfaction. The remaining Vrak ships adjusted their tactics, spreading out to flank the Nomad. One of them managed to score a glancing hit, rocking the ship violently. Hull breach in Section 4. Sparky reported. Emergency containment activated. That's the cargo hold, Kalen said, already adjusting course to minimize further damage. If they hit the same spot again. They won't, Lyra interrupted, moving to one of the newly installed weapon stations. Her markings glowed intensely as she synchronized with the system in a way Kalen didn't understand. When she fired, the energy pulse seemed to bend around obstacles, striking the second Vrak ship's weapons array with impossible precision. How did you? Kalen began, but was cut off as the third Vrak vessel launched a barrage of smaller attack drones. Proximity weapons, Vorla announced grimly. They mean to overwhelm our defenses. Not if I can help it, Kalen muttered, executing a series of tight maneuvers that would have torn a normal ship apart. The Nomad groaned under the strain, but the Kirani enhancements held. Two of the Kirani warriors coordinated their fire, creating a defensive screen that caught most of the incoming drones. Those that made it through were met by Kalen's increasingly erratic piloting, making them miss their marks. The damaged Vrak vessel is attempting to re-establish engine function, Sparky reported. Estimated time to operational status, 7.4 minutes. We need to go, Kalen decided, spotting a dense nebula on the long-range scanners. I can lose them in there. Vorla looked skeptical. The radiation levels are high enough to mask our signature completely, Kalen finished. Trust me, I've done this before. After a moment's consideration, Vorla nodded. Proceed. The nebula was a swirling mass of gases and stellar debris, navigable but dangerous. Kalen guided the Nomad deep into its embrace, using the densest clouds to screen their movement. The Vrak ships hesitated at the perimeter before the undamaged vessel cautiously followed, leaving its crippled companions behind. Power to minimal, Kalen ordered, shutting down all non-essential systems. Let the currents carry us. For several tense minutes, they drifted silently through the nebula, the eerie glow of the celestial gases reflecting off the bridge viewports. The Kirani warriors remained at their stations, weapons ready but dormant. They're still searching, Lyra whispered, watching the distant movements of the Vrak ship through the swirling gases. Eventually, the Vrak vessel withdrew, unable to penetrate the nebula's interference. Only then did Kalen allow himself to relax slightly. We should be safe here for a while, he said, checking the ship's status. At least until your flagship arrives. You handled the ship admirably, Vorla acknowledged, her tone softening marginally. Perhaps the ritual chose wisely after all. I wasn't aware the ritual did the choosing, Kalen replied dryly. The universe works in patterns beyond our understanding, Vorla said. You were meant to free my sister. You were meant to become our protector in this time of need. Such is the way of fate. I don't believe in fate, Kalen told her. Just choices and their consequences. Then you made a choice with far-reaching consequences indeed, Vorla replied, before turning to consult with her warriors about repairs to the damaged section of the ship. Left momentarily alone with Lyra, Kalen shook his head. Your sister is intense. She carries much responsibility, Lyra replied, her tone defensive but understanding. Our mother died protecting our secrets. Vorla has lived in the shadow of that sacrifice since she was barely more than a child. And what about you? What's your role in all this? Lyra's markings pulsed softly. I am keeper of the third fragment, the star charts that, when combined with my sister's knowledge, may lead to Kirani Prime. Each daughter of our direct line safeguards a piece of the puzzle. So, where do we go from here? Kalen asked. Once your flagship arrives? We seek a place of greater safety while we decipher the complete path to our ancestral home, Lyra explained. There is a haven, an asteroid colony established by Kirani exiles generations ago. It is not on any colonial charts. And then, if we can assemble all the fragments correctly, we find Kirani Prime, Lyra said simply. Before the wrack due, the stellar Oath arrived 6 hours later as promised, its imposing bulk somehow navigating the nebula with surprising grace. After confirming it was safe, Kalen guided the Nomad out of hiding to rendezvous with a larger vessel. "We'll transfer half of my warriors back to the flagship," Vorla decided as they prepared to dock. "The Nomad is too crowded for effective operation, and we need both ships functional." "No argument here," Kalen agreed, relieved at the prospect of reclaiming some space on his vessel. Once docked with the massive Karani warship, Kalen got his first real look at the technology of Lyra's people. The Stellar Oath's interior was a marvel of biomechanical engineering. Corridors that seemed to pulse with life, control systems that responded to touch and thought simultaneously, walls adorned with the same luminescent patterns that marked Karani's skin. "Your ship is something else," he commented to Lyra as she guided him through to the command center. "It is but a shadow of what our ancestors once built," she replied with quiet pride. The technologies of Karani Prime were said to be far beyond even this. In the command center, Vorla conferred with her senior officers, analyzing the data from their encounter with the wrack ships. One of the medical officers approached Lyra with a scanning device. "We must check you for tracking implants," she explained, running the device over Lyra's body. It emitted a soft chime when passing over her left shoulder. "There, a quantum tracer embedded in the muscle tissue. Can you remove it?" Vorla demanded. "Yes, but not here. The procedure requires specialized equipment at the Haven." "Then we proceed there immediately," Vorla decided. She turned to Kalen. "The Nomad will accompany the Stellar Oath. Your ship's unexpected capabilities may prove useful again." "Do I have a choice?" Kalen asked, already knowing the answer. "You always have a choice, Earthman," Vorla replied coolly, "but only one that honors your commitment." Back aboard the Nomad, now with a more manageable complement of 8 Karani warriors, including Lyra, Kalen found himself gradually adjusting to his new reality. With more space, the warriors had established a proper rotation of duties, integrating themselves into the ship's operations with surprising efficiency. "Your vessel has potential," commented one warrior named Estra as she helped Sparky calibrate the newly installed weapon systems. "Primitive, but adaptable." "Thanks, I think," Kalen replied, checking their course to the hidden Karani Haven. They were traveling in tight formation with the Stellar Oath, which provided both protection and guidance through the unfamiliar star systems. Over the next few days, as they journeyed deeper into uncharted space, Kalen began to learn more about his unwanted charges. Despite their fearsome reputation and martial culture, the Karani were not the cold warriors he had initially assumed. During their rest periods, they engaged in complex storytelling rituals, their markings creating beautiful patterns of light as they recounted tales of their history and mythology. Lyra often served as translator and interpreter for these sessions, explaining the cultural significance to an increasingly curious Kalen. Even Sparky developed a fascination with Kirani customs, compiling a meticulous database of their traditions and linguistic patterns. The probability calculations embedded in their decision-making processes are remarkably sophisticated, the robot commented one cycle. Their ritual structures appear arbitrary, but contain algorithmic efficiencies that optimize group cohesion and survival. "They're still forcing me to be their protector," Kalen pointed out. That ritual specifically demonstrates an 87.3% correlation with successful integration of outside genetic and cultural elements into their society, Sparky replied. "Historically effective, if somewhat coercive from the individual perspective." Not for the first time, Kalen wondered whose side Sparky was really on. The relative peace ended abruptly on the 6th day of their journey. Alarms blared throughout both ships as long-range sensors detected a massive wrack fleet directly in their path. "It's an ambush," Vorla's voice came through the comm system. "They've anticipated our destination." "How many ships?" Kalen demanded, already preparing evasive maneuvers. 17 vessels, including 2 dreadnoughts, came the grim reply. "We are outmatched." "We can't turn back," Lyra said, joining Kalen at the navigation console. The Haven is our only hope of removing my tracker. And we can't go forward into that fleet, Kalen countered. Not without becoming decorative particles floating in space. Vorla's voice came through again. There is another way. A shorter path to the Haven, but treacherous. It passes through the Carina Rift. Kalen felt his blood run cold. The Carina Rift was notorious among spacers, a massive tear in space-time that had claimed countless ships. Gravitational forces within it were unpredictable, radiation levels extreme, and the fabric of reality itself was said to thin dangerously within its depths. That's suicide, he protested. Not necessarily, Lyra interjected, her markings pulsing with sudden intensity. My fragment, the star charts I safeguard. They include navigation points through the rift. Ancient Qurani navigators mapped safe passages, though the knowledge has been lost to most. Even with those charts, the risk is extreme, Vorla acknowledged. But it is our only option. Kalen looked at the tactical display, where the Vrak fleet was moving to encircle their position. Then he glanced at Lyra, whose expression held both fear and determination. I need to see these charts, he said finally. Lyra nodded, closing her eyes in concentration. To Kalen's astonishment, the luminescent markings on her skin began to shift and rearrange themselves, forming complex navigational patterns that Sparky immediately began recording and analyzing. The patterns represent dimensional folds within the rift, Lyra explained. Places where the gravitational tides are predictable enough to navigate safely. If we calculate correctly, Sparky added, we could traverse the rift in approximately 14.7 hours, emerging less than 1 light-year from the Haven. The probability of successful passage is difficult to calculate precisely due to the chaotic nature of the rift, but I estimate between 27% and 43%. Better odds than facing that fleet, Kalen muttered, making his decision. Inform the Stellar Oath we're taking the rift passage. We'll lead, since the Nomad is more maneuverable. Vorla agreed to the plan, though not without expressing concern about placing her sister on the lead vessel. Nevertheless, time was short, and as the Vrak fleet closed in, both ships altered course toward the ominous gash in space that marked the beginning of the Carina Rift. The entry was chaotic. The moment they crossed the threshold, the Nomad was buffeted by gravitational currents that strained its structural integrity. The view screen filled with swirling energies in colors Kalen had never seen before, while the ship's instruments fluctuated wildly between readings. Navigation is compromised, Sparky announced, his mechanical voice crackling with interference. Conventional sensors inoperative. Use the charts, Kalen told Lyra, fighting the controls to maintain some semblance of stability. Guide us through. Lyra stood at the center of the bridge, her entire body now illuminated with complex navigational patterns. She began to speak in the ancient Qurani tongue, calling out directions that Sparky translated into navigational coordinates. The Qurani warriors moved with practiced efficiency, rerouting power to shields and structural integrity fields as needed. Behind them, the massive Stellar Oath followed in their wake, using the Nomad's path to navigate the treacherous currents. Hours passed in grueling concentration. Twice they nearly lost control when unexpected gravitational eddies caught them, and once a sudden radiation surge forced everyone except Sparky off the bridge for nearly an hour. But Lyra's charts proved accurate, guiding them through the labyrinth of warped space-time. It was during their 10th hour in the rift that disaster struck. A massive gravitational wave, seemingly from nowhere, slammed into both ships. The Nomad tumbled violently, systems failing across the board. The Stellar Oath, with its greater mass, fared even worse, its port side crushed by the invisible force. Hull breach on the flagship, one of the Qurani warriors shouted, monitoring the emergency channel. They're losing atmosphere. Can they continue? Kalen demanded, wrestling the Nomad back under control. The damage is severe, came Vorla's strained voice over the comm. Our drive system is compromised. We will not make it through at this rate. Kalen exchanged a look with Lyra, both thinking the same thing. If the Stellar Oath was destroyed, half of their number, including Vorla with her fragment of knowledge, would be lost. We need to dock with them. Transfer their crew to the Nomad, Kalen decided. The Nomad cannot hold so many, Sparky objected. It can't hold anyone if we're all dead, Kalen countered. Prepare for emergency docking. Maneuvering alongside the crippled flagship in the chaotic environment of the Rift was perhaps the greatest challenge of Kalen's piloting career. The Nomad's systems strained to the breaking point as he fought against unpredictable forces to align their airlocks. With a metallic clang that reverberated through both vessels, they connected. Immediately, Karani warriors began transferring from the damaged Stellar Oath to the Nomad. First the wounded, then the essential personnel, and finally Vorla herself, reluctantly abandoning her ship. The Stellar Oath has protected our people for generations, she said grimly as she stepped aboard the Nomad. Its loss is a deep wound. Ships can be rebuilt, Kalen replied, already preparing to disengage. People can't. With the flagship's crew crammed aboard, bringing their total to over 50 individuals in a space designed for 5, Kalen detached from the doomed vessel and continued their journey through the Rift, following Lyra's increasingly strained guidance. The final hours of their passage were a blur of emergency repairs, overcrowded corridors, and the constant battle against the Rift's chaotic forces. When they finally emerged into normal space, the Nomad was barely functioning, its hull scorched and buckled from the ordeal. But they had made it, and as Lyra had predicted, they were less than a light year from the hidden Karani haven. There, Vorla pointed to a distant cluster of asteroids that appeared unremarkable on sensors. Our sanctuary lies within. As they approached, what had seemed like natural formations revealed themselves to be carefully disguised structures, a massive asteroid colony built into the very rock itself, nearly invisible until one was upon it. Identification protocols have changed since I was last here. Vorla frowned, attempting to hail the colony. They're not responding to our signals. Perhaps because we arrive in an unfamiliar vessel, Lyra suggested. We must transmit the bloodline verification sequence. Vorla nodded. Then she, Lyra, and 3 other women of their direct line gathered in a circle. Their luminescent markings synchronized, creating a complex pattern that Sparky translated into a transmission signal. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the asteroid colony's hidden defenses powered down, and a docking bay opened within what had appeared to be solid rock. We are welcomed, Vorla announced with visible relief. The haven proved to be far more extensive than Kalen had imagined, a sprawling complex carved throughout the asteroid cluster, housing several thousand Karani. Unlike the warriors he had come to know, many of these were civilians, children, scholars, artisans, and elders. The last remnants of our people, Lyra explained as they were escorted deep into the colony. Those who escaped the destruction of our original homeworld generations ago. The colony's medical facility was their first stop, where Lyra was quickly taken for the procedure to remove the quantum tracker. Kalen found himself waiting anxiously outside, realizing with some surprise how much he had come to care for her well-being. Vorla joined him after conferring with the colony's leadership. The tracker has been successfully removed and contained, she informed him. Lyra will recover fully. Good. Kalen nodded, genuinely relieved. So what now? You're safe here, right? Mission accomplished. Vorla's expression darkened. This haven has remained secure only because its location was secret. Now that the Vrak are actively hunting us with advanced tracking methods, it is only a matter of time before they discover it. Our people cannot remain here indefinitely. So you find another hiding place, Kalen suggested. The galaxy's a big place. No, Vorla said firmly. We are tired of running, of hiding. It is time to reclaim our heritage. We must find Karani Prime and reactivate its ancient defenses. Only then will our people truly be safe. And you need my help for that too, I'm guessing. Kalen sighed. The ritual binds you to our protection, Vorla reminded him. But more than that, your actions in the Rift proved your worth beyond question. You risked your ship, your home, to save our people. Such honor is rare. Before Kalen could respond, A commotion drew their attention. A group of colony elders approached, led by a Karani woman so ancient that her luminescent markings had faded to a pale glow. All other Karani in the vicinity bowed respectfully. Grand Elder Ziria, Vorla greeted her with unusual deference. "We bring news of great importance." The ancient woman's gaze fixed on Kalen, her eyes still bright despite her advanced age. "So this is the Earthman who invoked the ritual of Jewai, she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "Come closer, protector." Feeling awkward, but seeing no alternative, Kalen stepped forward. The Grand Elder studied him intently, then reached out with a gnarled hand to touch his forehead. The moment her fingers made contact, Kalen gasped as images flooded his mind. Stars he'd never seen, worlds he'd never visited, and a sense of ancient power that took his breath away. "He has seen the path," the Elder announced, withdrawing her hand. "His mind is compatible with the old knowledge." "This is most unexpected. What'd you do to me?" Kalen demanded, shaken by the experience. "I tested your connection to the cosmic memory," she replied calmly. "Few non-Karani can perceive it at all. You saw something, did you not? Stars, planets." "I don't know what it means," Kalen admitted. "It means you may be more essential to our journey than we realized," Vorla said, looking at him with new consideration. "The path to Karani Prime requires one who can perceive the hidden markers left by our ancestors. The bloodline fragments held by my daughters provide the key," the Grand Elder explained, gesturing to Vorla, Lyra, who had just joined them, looking tired but well, and two other Karani women. "But the path itself requires a navigator attuned to the cosmic frequencies. Traditionally, this would be a Karani male of the bloodline, but none remain. You, Earthman, may serve instead." "Wait," Kalen held up his hands. "I'm just a salvage operator. I pilot ships through normal space, not cosmic frequencies or whatever you're talking about." "Yet you navigated the Carina Rift using ancient charts," the Elder pointed out. "And you perceived the cosmic memory when I touched your mind. These are not coincidences." "The ritual chose wisely indeed," Vorla murmured, almost to herself. Kalen sought out Lyra's eyes, looking for support or at least understanding. She stepped closer, her expression sympathetic but resolute. "I know this is not what you agreed to," she said softly, "but it may be why you were drawn to free me in the first place. Something beyond chance brought you to that prison ship." "I don't believe in destiny," Kalen repeated his earlier assertion, but with less conviction now. "Then believe in the evidence before you," the Grand Elder suggested. "Your mind responds to the ancient knowledge. Your actions align with the needs of our people. Whether by fate or fortune, you are here now when we need you most." Kalen looked around at the gathered Karani, warriors and civilians alike, their luminescent markings glowing with hope and expectation. He thought of his life before meeting Lyra, the lonely salvage runs, the constant moving from place to place, never belonging anywhere or to anyone. "What exactly would I have to do?" he asked finally. "Join with the daughters of the bloodline in the Chamber of Communion," the Elder explained. "There, the fragments will be united, and the true coordinates of Kirani Prime revealed. Your perception will guide the final adjustments, ensuring we follow the correct path. And after that, once we find this Kirani Prime, the ancient defenses must be reactivated," Vorla said. "The records suggest this will require all bearers of the bloodline fragments working in concert." "Is it dangerous?" Kalen pressed. The Grand Elder's expression grew solemn. "All great endeavors carry risk. The power sealed within Kirani Prime is immense. Controlling it will tax us to our limits. But if we succeed," Lyra added, "our people will have a true home again, and the Vrak will never threaten us, or anyone, again." Kalen took a deep breath, weighing his options. He could still refuse, take his battered ship, and disappear into the vastness of space. The Karani would likely let him go now that they were in there. Haven, ritual or no ritual. But something held him here, something more than obligation or honor or even his growing feelings for Lyra. "Sparky," he called to his mechanical companion, who had been silently observing the exchange. What's your assessment? Probability of success. The robot's optical sensors flickered as he processed the question. Insufficient data for precise calculation, he admitted. However, based on observed patterns and outcomes thus far, I estimate a 58.7% chance of successfully finding Kirani Prime and activating its defenses. Better odds than we had in the rift, Kalen noted with a wry smile. He turned back to the elder. All right, I'll help you find your ancestral home. But my ship and Sparky come with us, regardless of what happens. Agreed, the Grand Elder nodded. Rest now. Repairs to your vessel are already underway. Tomorrow, we begin the communion. As the gathering dispersed, Lyra remained behind with Kalen. Her markings pulsed with an emotion he couldn't quite read. Thank you, she said simply. I knew from the moment you freed me that you were different from other humans. Now I understand why. Don't thank me yet, Kalen cautioned. We still have to find this place and activate whatever ancient technology is supposed to save your people. A lot can go wrong, but much can also go right, Lyra countered, her hand briefly touching his. Sleep well, Kalen Vance. Tomorrow we make history, or find it. The Chamber of Communion was unlike anything Kalen had ever seen. Deep within the asteroid, the Kirani had created a perfect sphere lined with crystal that captured and amplified the light from their luminescent markings. At the center stood a platform where Vorla, Lyra, and 3 other women of their bloodline, including the Grand Elder herself, had positioned themselves in a circle. The Earthman must stand at the center, the Elder instructed, gesturing Kalen forward. Feeling distinctly out of place, Kalen stepped onto the platform. The 5 Kirani women surrounded him, each glowing more brightly than he had ever seen before. Clear your mind, Lyra whispered to him. Let the cosmic memory flow through you, as it did when the Elder touched you. Easier said than done, Kalen muttered, but closed his eyes and tried to focus. The ritual began with a harmonic chant, the 5 women's voices blending in tones that seemed to resonate with the crystal chamber itself. Their markings shifted and flowed, each revealing a distinct pattern that represented their fragment of knowledge. At first, Kalen felt nothing but awkward. Then, gradually, a warmth spread through him, starting at his temples and flowing downward. Behind his closed eyelids, stars began to appear. Constellations he recognized, and many he didn't, spinning and realigning themselves. He is connecting, he heard the Elder say, her voice sounding distant. The cosmic memory accepts him. The sensation intensified. Kalen felt as if he were simultaneously within his body on the platform and soaring through space, following a trail of starlight that only he could see. Coordinates, navigational markers, gravitational signatures, all flowed through his consciousness in a rush of information too vast to fully comprehend. Then, abruptly, he saw it. A star system hidden within a nebula, concealed by natural phenomena and ancient technology. A world that pulsed with the same luminescent energy as Kirani markings, its surface dotted with structures of impossible design. Kirani Prime, he gasped, the name coming to him from nowhere. The vision solidified, imprinting itself in his mind with such clarity that he knew he could navigate to it blindfolded. The cosmic trail leading there was complex, passing through dimensional folds similar to the Carina Rift, but far more stable. Hidden pathways through space that would conceal their approach. When Kalen opened his eyes, the 5 Kirani women were staring at him, their markings now synchronized in a single unified pattern. You have seen the way, the Grand Elder stated. It wasn't a question. Yes, Kalen nodded, still disoriented from the experience. It's incredible, hidden in plain sight, but unless you know exactly where to look and how to approach, you'd never find it. The wisdom of our ancestors, Vorla said with reverence. They concealed our homeworld not just with technology, but with the very fabric of space itself. Can you guide us there? Lyra asked, her eyes bright with hope. I think so, Kalen replied. But it won't be easy. The path crosses several dimensional thresholds, not as chaotic as the rift, but tricky to navigate. The Nomad is nearly repaired, Vorla informed him. And we have retrofitted 3 of our own vessels with similar enhancements. We will follow your lead. How soon do we leave? Kalen asked. Immediately, the Grand Elder declared. The Communion will have created a momentary energy surge that the Vrak may detect. We cannot risk remaining here. Within hours, a small fleet of 4 ships departed the hidden haven, the Nomad in the lead, with Kalen, Lyra, and a minimal crew aboard, followed by 3 Karani vessels carrying the remaining Bloodline members and their warrior escorts. The rest of the Karani would remain at the haven, ready to evacuate to Karani Prime once its defenses were activated. Navigating the hidden path proved as challenging as Kalen had anticipated. The cosmic memory provided the route, but translating that into actual flight paths required all his skill and concentration. Several times they had to pass through areas where normal space folded in on itself, creating passages that defied conventional physics. The probability of navigational error increases with each dimensional threshold, Sparky warned as they approached the 3rd such crossing. Human consciousness was not designed to process 5-dimensional coordinates. Good thing I'm not entirely relying on human consciousness then, Kalen replied, his mind still partly attuned to the cosmic memory from the communion ritual. Beside him, Lyra maintained physical contact with his arm, her markings pulsing in synchronization with his navigational adjustments, strengthening his connection to the path. As they ventured deeper along the hidden route, communication with the following vessels became increasingly difficult. Space-time distortions interfered with standard signals, forcing them to rely on Karani light pulse communications, flashes of energy that could penetrate the distortions. They were halfway to their destination when disaster struck. As they emerged from a particularly complex dimensional threshold, sensors detected multiple vessels waiting in ambush. Vrak. Vorla's voice came through the distorted comm system. They've anticipated our path. Impossible, Kalen muttered, checking the navigational plot. This route isn't even on conventional star charts. The tracker, Lyra realized with horror. They must have analyzed its quantum signature before we removed it, determined it was linked to cosmic memory pathways. The Vrak fleet moved to intercept, their weapons already charging. Unlike their previous encounters, this force was massive, a full battle group led by a command ship easily 3 times the size of the Lost Stellar Oath. All vessels, evasive pattern Omega. Vorla commanded. Weapons free. The 4 ships scattered, each taking a different vector to divide the Vrak's attention. The Nomad, being the smallest and most maneuverable, drew heavy fire as the Vrak correctly identified it as the lead vessel. They're trying to stop us from reaching the next threshold, Kalen observed, pushing the Nomad through a series of tight maneuvers. If we can make it past their line, we can disappear into the next fold. The fold is still 17 minutes away at maximum speed, Sparky calculated. Probability of reaching it under current enemy fire, 22.4%. One of the Karani vessels suddenly broke formation, charging directly at the largest concentration of Vrak ships. Its weapons blazed brilliantly, causing significant damage before it was engulfed in return fire. Diversion tactic, Lyra explained grimly. They're buying us time. The sacrifice worked. With many Vrak vessels distracted, the Nomad and the 2 remaining Kirani ships pushed forward toward the dimensional threshold. We're going to make it, Kalen said, watching the distance close. Then a new contact appeared on their sensors, emerging from the very threshold they were racing toward. A second Vrak fleet, Vorla's voice came, tight with tension. They've surrounded the approach. We're trapped between them, one of the other Karani captains reported. No way through. Kalen stared at the tactical display, mind racing. The cosmic memory still flowed through him, showing him the path to Karani Prime, but that path was now blocked by overwhelming force. There has to be another way, he insisted, searching the knowledge that had been imprinted in his mind. Another approach, another threshold. Lyra's hand tightened on his arm. The ancient way, she suggested. The path of the first migration. It's dangerous, unstable, but possible, Kalen finished, suddenly seeing it in the cosmic memory. A much older pathway, one that the ancient Karani had used before establishing the more stable routes. It would require passing perilously close to a neutron star, using its gravity well to slingshot into a naturally occurring space-time rupture. The ship's structural integrity field cannot withstand such gravitational forces, Sparky objected. It can with Karani enhancements, Lyra countered. We must try. Kalen made his decision. All ships, new coordinates incoming. Seemingly empty region of space. The Vrak pursued, but their larger ships couldn't match the acceleration. As they approached the neutron star, its intense gravitational pull began to affect the ships, straining their structural fields to the limit. The Nomad shuddered violently, systems flashing warnings across every console. Hull integrity at 64% and dropping, Sparky reported. Power fluctuations in all systems. Maintain course, Kalen ordered, his hands white-knuckled on the controls. We'll only get one shot at this. The neutron star's radiation bathed the view screen in eerie blue light as they swung around its outer gravitational boundary, accelerating to speeds that pushed the edges of what their vessels could withstand. Behind them, some of the pursuing Vrak ships attempted to follow but strayed too close to the neutron star's kill zone, their hulls crushed by the immense gravitational forces. Approaching slingshot point, Kalen announced. All ships, prepare for maximum acceleration on my mark. The maneuver, when executed, was both terrifying and beautiful. The three ships curved around the neutron star's gravitational well like comets, gathering momentum before being flung outward toward a shimmer in space that was barely visible to conventional sensors but blazed like a beacon in Kalen's cosmic memory-enhanced perception. The Vrak vessels that had survived the neutron star's gravity were too far behind now, unable to catch up before their quarry reached the space-time rupture. We're going to make it, Lyra breathed, her markings pulsing with renewed hope. As they approached the rupture, Kalen felt the cosmic memory surging within him, guiding his hands on the controls with precision beyond his normal capabilities. The rupture expanded before them. Not a clean threshold like the established pathways, but a chaotic tear in reality itself. All ships, maintain formation, he instructed. Follow our entry vector exactly. The Nomad plunged into the rupture first, the fabric of space-time contorting around them in ways that defied comprehension. For a terrifying moment, all systems failed, plunging the bridge into darkness broken only by the glow of Lyra's markings. Then, with a sensation like breaking through ice, they emerged on the other side. Status report, Kalen called out, blinking against the sudden return of normal lighting. All systems rebooting, Sparky replied, his mechanical voice fluctuating before stabilizing. Hull integrity at 47%. Life support functional. Navigation systems. Recalibrating. The other ships? Lyra asked anxiously. Sensors gradually came back online, revealing that only one of the Karani vessels had successfully followed them through. The third had not emerged. Vorla's ship made it, Kalen confirmed, receiving the light pulse communication from the surviving vessel. The other didn't follow our exact vector. Lost in the rupture. Lyra's markings dimmed momentarily in mourning before she refocused on their task. Where are we? Kalen consulted both the ship's instruments and the cosmic memory still lingering in his mind. We're close. Closer than I expected. The rupture deposited us almost directly at our destination coordinates. Through the view screen, a massive nebula swirled before them. Clouds of luminescent gases in hues that matched the markings of the Karani themselves. Hidden within its depths, barely visible even to enhanced sensors, was a star system. Karani prime lies within, Lyra whispered reverently. After generations of exile, we have returned. Vorla's ship moved alongside the Nomad, both vessels entering the nebula cautiously. The further they penetrated into the glowing clouds, the more Kalen felt the cosmic memory resonating within him, confirming they were on the right path. Multiple detection signals, Sparky announced suddenly. Ancient defense systems are scanning us. They recognize the bloodline signatures, Lyra said, her markings pulsing in a complex pattern. The way is opening. Before them, the nebula seemed to part like a curtain, revealing a planetary system centered around a golden star. The third planet, a world of swirling blues and greens with rings of crystalline particles, pulsed with the same luminescence as Kirani markings. Home, Lyra breathed, tears forming in her eyes. Our ancestral home. As they approached the planet, massive structures became visible in orbit. Ancient space stations and defense platforms, dormant for millennia, but still intact. On the surface, continent-spanning cities gleamed like jewels, preserved in stasis fields that had protected them from the ravages of time. The probability of such advanced preservation technology functioning after so many millennia is approximately 0.0034%, Sparky noted with what sounded almost like awe in his mechanical voice. This defies statistical analysis. Our ancestors built to last, Lyra replied simply. The two ships entered orbit cautiously, scanning for signs of the defensive systems that legends claimed protected the ancient homeworld. They appeared dormant, but Kalen could sense their latent power through the cosmic memory connection. We need to land near the primary nexus, Vorla instructed Viacom, the central control facility for the planetary defense network. According to our fragments, it lies beneath the capital city. Guided by the combined knowledge of the bloodline fragments and Kalen's cosmic memory perception, they identified a massive structure at the heart of the largest continent, a temple-like building surrounded by concentric rings of smaller structures. That's our target, Kalen confirmed, feeling an inexplicable certainty. The defense systems can be activated from there. Both ships descended through the atmosphere, encountering no resistance from the ancient automated defenses, a sign that the bloodline's signatures were indeed being recognized. They landed in a vast plaza before the central structure, the surface untouched by erosion or decay thanks to the stasis fields. As they disembarked, Kalen felt a strange sensation, as if the planet itself was somehow alive and aware of their presence. The air, though breathable, carried a slight charge that made his skin tingle. For the Kirani, the effect was more pronounced, their markings glowing more intensely than he had ever seen. The ambient energy, Lyra explained, noticing his reaction. It resonates with our bioluminescence. This is what we were designed for, to live in harmony with this world. Vorla led their group toward the central structure, her warriors forming a protective perimeter despite the apparent absence of threats. The Grand Elder, who had traveled on Vorla's ship, walked slowly but steadily at the center of their formation, her ancient eyes taking in the world her ancestors had fled generations ago. It is exactly as described in the memory songs, she murmured. The city of light, heart of our civilization. The entrance to the primary nexus was a massive doorway inscribed with patterns matching those on Kirani's skin. As the bloodline bearers approached, these patterns began to glow in response, and the doors, sealed for thousands of years, slowly parted. Inside was a vast chamber dominated by a crystalline structure that rose from floor to ceiling, a complex lattice of translucent material that pulsed with inner light. Around its base were 5 pedestals arranged in a perfect circle. The Communion Nexus, the Grand Elder announced. From here, our ancestors controlled the planetary defense systems that protected our civilization from all threats. Why did they abandon it? Kalen asked, genuinely curious. If this place was so well protected, they didn't abandon it willingly, Lyra explained, her voice somber. According to our histories, a catastrophic event, possibly a supernova in a nearby system, destabilized the nebula surrounding our world. The defense systems were overtaxed, and our ancestors were forced to evacuate before they failed completely. They always intended to return once the cosmic disturbance subsided, but by then, the knowledge of how to find this place had been fractured and encoded into the bloodline for safekeeping. And now we have returned, Vorla said firmly, to reclaim our heritage and ensure our survival. The Grand Elder approached the central crystal structure, placing her hand against its surface. The lattice responded immediately, illuminating with increased intensity. "The system recognizes me," she confirmed, "but it requires all 5 bloodline fragments to fully activate. Each bearer must take position at a pedestal." Vorla, Lyra, and the 2 other bloodline women moved to the indicated positions, each placing their hands on the pedestals. As they did so, their markings synchronized, patterns flowing between them as if sharing information. "What about me?" Kalen asked, uncertain of his role now that they had reached their destination. "You are the navigator," the Grand Elder replied. "In ancient times, this role would have been filled by a male of our bloodline, but you have proven an adequate substitute. You must stand at the center, beneath the apex of the crystal. Your cosmic memory connection will help stabilize the activation sequence." Feeling somewhat apprehensive but committed to seeing this through, Kalen took his position at the center of the circle. Above him, the crystalline lattice seemed to bend slightly toward him, responding to his presence. "The activation ritual requires complete synchronization," the Grand Elder instructed. "Focus your minds on the defense network. Visualize it spreading throughout the system, a shield against all harm." The 5 Qurani women began to chant in their ancient language, their markings pulsing in perfect unison. Kalen felt the cosmic memory surge within him again, stronger than before, showing him not just star patterns but complex energy matrices and defense configurations that span the entire planetary system. The crystal lattice above began to rotate, picking up speed until it was a blur of light and refracted energy. Beams shot out from it, connecting to each of the pedestals and to Kalen himself, creating a geometric pattern of pure energy. "It's working," Lyra called out, her voice strained with effort. "The defense network is initializing." Kalen could feel it happening. Ancient systems throughout the planet and an orbit coming online, dormant energy sources awakening after millennia of silence. Through the cosmic memory, he sensed the defense grid extending outward, encompassing not just the planet but the entire star system, creating an impenetrable barrier against outside threats. Then a warning flashed through his mind, a sense of imminent danger that hadn't been there before. "Something's wrong," he shouted over the increasingly loud hum of energy. "Something's coming." Vrak vessels detected. Sparky's voice came through Kalen's communicator. 17 ships emerging from dimensional transition points around the system. They appear to have tracked our passage through the rupture. "Impossible," Vorla growled. "The defenses should prevent their approach." "The network isn't fully activated yet," the Grand Elder explained, her aged voice tense with effort. "We need more time to complete the initialization sequence." Time we don't have, Kalen realized, seeing through the cosmic memory connection that the Vrak fleet was launching energy weapons designed to disrupt the forming defense grid. They're targeting the orbital platforms specifically. A decision crystallized in his mind, clear and certain in a way few things in his life had ever been. Through the cosmic memory, he could see what needed to be done, though the cost would be high. "I can stabilize the grid," he announced. "Guide the full activation sequence." "Ow!" Lyra demanded, her eyes meeting his with sudden concern. "You're not Qurani. The system wasn't designed for human integration." "No, but the navigator role was designed to channel and direct energy," Kalen replied, the knowledge coming to him through the cosmic connection. "I can do this." Before anyone could stop him, Kalen reached up and touched the central crystal directly. Immediately, energy surged through him, connecting him fully to the ancient defense system. Pain lanced through his body, but with it came clarity, a complete understanding of the defense network and how to bring it to full power. "Kalen, stop!" Lyra cried. "The human physiology cannot withstand such energy levels." Too late for that. He managed through gritted teeth, focusing his mind on the task. Through his connection, he could see the Vrak ships closing in, their weapons charged and ready to destroy what the Qurani had just rediscovered. With a supreme effort of will, Kalen channeled the building energy of the defense grid, directing it outward in a massive pulse that spread from the planet in all directions. The ancient orbital platforms responded instantly, their dormant weapons systems coming fully online and targeting the approaching Vrak fleet. The effect was devastating. The first wave of Vrak ships was caught completely by surprise, their shields failing against weapons technology far beyond their understanding. Those that attempted to flee found themselves trapped by spatial distortion fields that the defense grid had generated around the system's perimeter. Within minutes, the Vrak threat was neutralized completely, their ships either destroyed or disabled and adrift. But the victory came at a cost. As the defense grid stabilized, Kalen collapsed, the connection to the crystal severed. Lyra was at his side instantly, cradling his head as the other Kirani rushed to help. "Foolish, brave Earthman," she whispered, her markings pulsing with distress. "Why did you do that?" "Seemed like the right thing to do," Kalen replied weakly, managing a small smile despite the pain racking his body. "Just like freeing you from those chains." The Grand Elder knelt beside him, her ancient hands passing over his body with diagnostic precision. "The energy has caused significant cellular disruption," she announced grimly, "but not irreparable damage. Our medical technology can heal him, though the process will be transformative." "What does that mean?" Kalen asked, his vision beginning to blur. "It means you have proven yourself worthy of our highest honor," Vorla said, her usual stern demeanor softened by genuine respect. "The ritual of JYK Tau is fulfilled beyond all expectation. You have not merely protected our bloodline. You have saved our entire species and restored our ancestral home. The healing process will integrate aspects of Kirani biology into your system," the Grand Elder explained. "It is the only way to repair the damage caused by the energy surge. You will not become fully Kirani, but you will be something new, a bridge between our peoples." Kalen looked up at Lyra, whose tears fell upon his face like luminescent raindrops. "Will I get the glowing tattoos?" he joked weakly. "Perhaps something less elaborate," she replied, a smile breaking through her worry. "But yes, some bioluminescence will likely develop." "Worth it," Kalen decided, before consciousness slipped away from him entirely. Kalen awoke in a chamber flooded with golden light, lying on a bed that seemed to conform perfectly to his body. The pain was gone, replaced by a strange new awareness, as if he could feel energy flowing through him and around him in ways he never had before. Raising his hands, he saw faint luminescent patterns tracing the veins in his wrists and forearms. Nothing as elaborate as Kirani markings, but definitely not human standard either. "He awakens," came Sparky's familiar mechanical voice. The robot moved into view, his optical sensors adjusting as he examined Kalen. "Fascinating biological modifications. Your cellular structure has been reinforced with Kirani energy conductive elements. I calculate your potential lifespan has been extended by approximately 83.7 years, assuming no traumatic injuries." "Good to see you too, Sparky," Kalen replied, his voice stronger than expected. "How long was I out?" 7 standard days, came Lyra's voice as she entered the chamber. Her markings pulsed with what Kalen could now recognize as joy. The healing process was extensive. She approached his bedside, taking his hand in hers. To his surprise, his newly developed luminescence responded to her touch, brightening slightly. "That's new," he commented, looking at the interaction between their markings. "A sign of compatibility," she explained with a smile. "Your human DNA merged well with the Kirani elements. The medical elders say you've taken to the changes better than anyone expected." "What's happened while I was recovering?" Kalen asked, sitting up slowly. "Our people have begun returning from the Haven," Lyra reported. "The defense grid you activated has held perfectly. No Vrak vessel can approach within a light year of this system now. We are truly safe for the first time in generations. And the Nomad? Your ship has been fully repaired and enhanced further," she assured him. "Vorla insisted upon it, as part of your honor gift." "Honor gift? For services rendered to our people beyond the requirements of the ritual," Lyra explained. "It is tradition. The Council of Elders has also granted you citizenship of Kirani Prime, the first non-Kirani ever to receive such status. You may stay or go as you please, though. She hesitated. I hope you might consider staying, at least for a while. Kalen looked at her closely, sensing something more in her invitation. Just for a while? He asked quietly. Lyra's markings pulsed with an emotion he was beginning to recognize. The ritual that bound you to our protection is officially fulfilled, she said carefully. But there are other rituals among our people, ones that forge different kinds of bonds. I might be interested in learning about those, Kalen replied with a smile, squeezing her hand gently. His own faint markings brightened in response to the contact. A discreet cough from the doorway announced Vorla's arrival. The matriarch had changed in the days since their arrival, her bearing still proud and commanding, but with a newfound serenity that came from having successfully completed her life's mission. The Grand Elder requests your presence in the central chamber when you are recovered enough to attend, she informed Kalen. There is to be a celebration of our return to Kirani Prime, and you are to be honored publicly. I'll be there, Kalen promised, though I'm not much for ceremonies. You freed my sister from chains, Earthman, Vorla remarked, a hint of warmth creeping into her usually stern voice. Then you freed our entire people from the chains of exile and fear. Whatever discomfort a ceremony causes you is a small price in comparison, wouldn't you agree? Kalen laughed, surprised by her almost teasing tone. When you put it that way, matriarch, how can I refuse? After Vorla departed, Kalen stood carefully, testing his transformed body. He felt stronger, more balanced, with a curious sensitivity to the energies around him, an echo of the cosmic memory connection that had been fully awakened during the defense grid activation. So what now? He asked Lyra as they walked together through the ancient hallways of a city, being rapidly reoccupied by its rightful inheritors. Your people have their home back. The Vrak are defeated. The ritual is fulfilled. Now we build a future, Lyra replied simply. For thousands of years, my people have been focused only on survival, on preserving what was lost. Now we can look forward instead of backward. She glanced at him, her markings pulsing. Softly, perhaps with new perspectives to guide us. Outside, the golden light of Kirani Prime's sun bathed the ancient city in warmth. Kirani ships continued to arrive in the atmosphere above, bringing more of their scattered people home. In the plaza where they had first landed, Sparky was engaged in animated conversation with several Kirani technicians, apparently discussing the finer points of probability calculations as applied to Kirani cultural rituals. I never did believe in fate, Kalen mused, watching the activity around them. Always thought I made my own way. And what do you believe now? Lyra asked. Kalen considered the unlikely chain of events that had brought him here. From finding Lyra in chains aboard that derelict prison ship to standing on the surface of a legendary lost world with luminescent patterns flowing beneath his skin. I believe some chains are worth breaking, he said finally, even if you don't know where it might lead. Lyra's markings brightened as she took his hand once more. And some bonds are worth forging, she added softly, even if they weren't planned. Together, they walked into the golden light of a new beginning, for themselves, for the Kirani people, and perhaps for the galaxy at large. The nomad rested nearby, ready for whatever adventures might come next, while Sparky continued his meticulous cataloging of Kirani customs, for future reference. And if sometimes, in quiet moments, Kalen wondered at the strange paths that life could take, from a lonely salvage operator to the honored protector of an ancient civilization. He needed only to look at the faint luminescence in his hands to remind himself that the universe was far more mysterious and interconnected than he had ever imagined. Some chains, once broken, set you free to forge bonds far stronger and more meaningful than you could have dreamed possible.